Okay, let's try it again. Okay, here we go. I think we did Yom Tov already. We're done with that.
Kavod Rav, we are done with the loss of Yom Tov?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. What will we study next?
Let's take a look at it. Yeah, so we can, we can either, we have lots of options. We can go back to where we stopped before and continue from there, which was, laws of prayer. That's one possibility. There's also other things we can do.
What about the loss of Shabbat?
So we yeah, so Shabbat is a long topic. It'll take like, let's say, a few years, like probably 3 to 5 years, to finish that at the pace that we go, because we go, like, we go an hour a day, whatever, 5 times a week. So that will take a long time. Question is, all right, so I don't think it's really, it's one of the longest topics. Even when you learn, just like Shabbat full time, it can take even full time. When you learn full time, it can take up to 3 years, depending on how you learn it. Lots of chapters, lots of things. See, let's take a look at the one in a second. Maybe we should do Reish Mem, thing that comes before Shabbat. Yeah, it's good, to get ready for marriage, maybe to try that one. We can do that quickly also.
I think that's a great topic. You had a video, you shared a video this morning
Okay.
about the wife of um Bet Joseph, not Bet Joseph.
Right, the wife from Maran, yeah.
Yes, how she was a great wife,
Right.
and so I think that's a great topic to
Is
be
it
talked about.
this is called the laws of tzniut,
Yes.
that's what it's called, So yeah, okay, it's a little spicy, what can I tell you? If you like spicy food. Okay. Okay, maybe we should try that. Let's see. We'll do something a little bit spicy. We can finish it quickly, It's only one chapter basically, but it's a lot of things. Okay. Okay, so yeah, let's try that. It's not something that is covered very often in public. This is usually learned in private with some private group, whatever. But it's all good. Whatever. Let's try it out. So it says like this, right? So it says, right, in the Torah, a person is married, he shouldn't be accustomed too much, right, in Mishto, to be with his wife. Right? So it says, like we say, that the Torah scholars should not be with their wives, like chickens. Okay. So what does that mean to be a chicken? It says not only Torah scholars, so he says really refers to everybody. Then why does it say Torah scholars? Because he says Torah scholars are accustomed, to be more, right, saintly, what do you want to call it, right? They only want to, do whatever the Torah tells them to do regarding this. So what does that mean? That there is rules about when a person gets married, how frequently he has to be with his wife. What's the frequency? Right. So that's what we're talking about. Atayrin. So it says over here, right, like this. The Torah says, he brings this from the Gemara. Hatayrin shepanasam mitzvah. So it says, if you have a person who's not working, and he's kind of like a free man, he's in other words, he's pretty much That's what they call the Americans. He's like a socialite. Doesn't really work. Just hangs around. Goes around socializes with people. All right. So a person like that was a lot of free time on his hands. He's not really doing much with his life, right? So what does that mean? He doesn't need to really work because he's wealthy. So he can live off his wealth. And right. He doesn't really need to have a career or a job. Whatever. So a person like that, right? So how much should they be with their wife? How often? So it says, right, every day, right? Once a day. This is the frequency of a guy like that, who doesn't really have much to do in his life. So why is that? What's the connection between this and that? Connection is that, if he's not really so busy with his career, so he has more energy and time, to be with his wife. So why not? He should. He's got more energy. He doesn't really wear out his body doing other things. That's the reason why. Okay. So that's the most extreme case. Somebody who's like, not really working really on a daily basis, whatever. Then we have po'alim she'osim melacha be'ir acheret. Then we have workers, who are doing their labor in a different town, right? So what does that mean? They travel from one town to another. It's like somebody who lives in New Jersey, but he goes to New York, to work there. He drives every day, whatever it is, right? In the old days, it was much more than driving. They used to actually, physically go there, like either riding on an animal or just walking there, whatever it was, So they got tired from that. They were very exhausted just from the trip. Today we have cars, so it makes it life easier, obviously, and that's the thing. So therefore, a person like that, right, who's going to a different town, but they come back home to sleep. They don't sleep out of town. They just go, they come back, and they sleep at home. Right? So a person like that, once a week, he should be with his wife. Why is that? Because he's tired, he's always traveling, every day. So he's tired. So he doesn't really need more energy than that. Once a week is enough for him. Okay, that's the story there. But if they're working in their town, they don't have to leave town, right? To work there. So there, right, it says twice a week. Because they have more energy, since they're not traveling so much. That's the reason why. So it says, right, what about somebody who's right, a donkey driver, right? So also once a week. Why is it? Because this donkey driver, he goes, on long trips. So he's also tired. So he can do about once a week because of the extensive travel that he does. He's tired, so once a week is good enough. Okay, so then, right, it says the gamalim, right? What about the one who's right, camel driver? Once a month, right? So what's the difference between the donkey guy, right, and the camel guy? So if you know the nature of the animals, right, the donkey travels, right, but not such great distances like the camel does. The camel can go longer distances. So therefore, a person who's riding a camel for a living, he's going usually long distances, and that means that he's not home very often. He's out of town a lot, and he sleeps there too. So therefore, he comes home, like once in a while. So for him, once a month, because he's always out of town. Okay, that's the story there. So then he goes on. Yeah. So then we have the most extreme case right on the other side, which is sapanim right? So what are we talking about? What about a sailor, right? So sailors, especially in the old days, that when they went out to sail in the seas, they didn't really come home very often at all. Maybe twice a year. They were sailing all the time on the sea, So because of that, it says right once every 6 months is their schedule. Why is that? Because that's when they come home. They're always away, sailing around. Okay, so then he says, right? So what about Torah scholars, right? What are they supposed to do? So it says, right, just once a week, but particularly on Shabbat. So why on Shabbat? Right, so truth is, the Mikubalim talk about this. If you look in the Kaf HaChaim and other sources, they say the reason the Talmid Chacham is supposed to be with his wife on Shabbat is because that brings down a good soul, to the child. It's more right conducive to bringing down a holy neshama. So therefore, if you impregnate your wife on Shabbat, it'll be a very holy child there, So also a new neshama who's not reincarnated, so he'll be more holy, more pious, more saintly person. So this is why we recommend the Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, to be with their wives on Shabbat. So the question is, right? What level do you have to be on, to fulfill this? And so the truth is, you have to be a pretty good level, pretty high level, to fulfill this, because that means you're learning Torah like day and night. And so what does that mean? The Talmid Chacham is so busy, learning all the time. He's always tired, from the learning, and learning really, wears him out. That's why he doesn't have much energy, to be with his wife, like, on a daily basis or whatever, things like this, right? He doesn't have enough strength for that. That's the problem, Learning Torah wears you out. So that's the reason why they said about the rabbis once a week, There are some books, like it says in the Mishnah Berurah, in this chapter, it says, right, that nowadays the custom is by the Torah scholars, twice a week, not once a week. And that's because, we're not really on that level like we used to be. So therefore, Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars in this generation are more like down to earth, they're not so holy like they used to be before, so not the same thing. Okay, whatever, right? So you get the idea, The truth is that all these, things that were said by the rabbis regarding this issue, are talking about, a very, narrow kind of a situation. But if you talk about it more broadly, including all kinds of people, so then, right, it really depends on, how much physical energy he has, how tired he is, right, how healthy his body is also. There's all kinds of things that effectuate, these things. And so you have to figure out what's right, for your predicament according to the situation that you're in. And this is what we're talking about here. Okay, so that's the tour, right? So let's look at the Beit Yosef. Let's see what he says about this. No, not this one. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. So says Bet Yosef regarding that. Where is the source for this? Perek mi shemeto, right? In Brachot. So this is in Brachot Chabet. So where does it talk about this? About the frequency which is said in the Torah? Perek Afal Pi, right? Whereas then Ketubot Samech Aleph. בכל אדם צריך לפקוד בפוד אשתו בליל שבתפילתה. Right, so that's good. So let's go back to the Torah. We have a little bit more to read there. So it says in the Torah like this, right? בכל אדם צריך לפקוד את אשתו בליל תפילתה ובשעת שיוצא בדרך. So every person, right, has to try to be with his wife when she goes to the mikveh, that night. Also, another thing he says is that also when he goes out before he travels, goes out to travel, same thing, the night before. Okay, so let's see the tour on that. The Beit Yosef, I'm sorry. So he brings that source also. What's the source for that? So it says Beit Yosef, so it says, it comes out like that from this Gemara, right, which is in Chav Daled Amud Aleph, which is in Brachot. So it says there, Amar Rav Hanuna Bered Rabbi Yosef, right, this rabbi says, Hava kaimna kameh de Rabba, ve'amar li zil ayte tefillin. So he says, I was standing in front of Rabba, and he told me, to bring tefillin. והשכחתינו בין קר לכסת שלא כנגד ראשו, והבה ידענה דיום תפילה הבאה. So it says, ידענה דיום תפילה הבאה, ובפירוש רש"י יום תפילה הבא יום שטבלה אשתו דהבה ליל תשמיש, ובשעת היוצא לדרך. So yeah, so over there, right, we learn this Gemara that a person, he personally witnessed this, this rabbi, that you're supposed to be with your wife before, when she goes to mikvah. Also, right, when he goes on the road, when he goes to travel, right? Right, where is this in Yevamot? Samech Bet Amud Bet. Ve'amina beGemara dehane mile dechayav lefakda ki azi ledavar ashut. So he said that's they learned there in the Gemara one thing regarding what they said. That he has to be with his wife when he travels. Before he travels, we're talking about he's traveling for not a mitzvah purpose. But when he's going for a mitzvah purpose, he's not obligated to do that. Okay, so it says Katav Ravad, says that Ravad צריך לברר איזו היא מחשבה נכונה שתהיה לידם בשעת תשמיש, right? So then he goes on with the tour talking about this book of the Ravad, right? So the Ravad wrote a book about things like this. It's called Bale Nefesh, this book, So over there, he talks about the issue of how a person should conduct himself with his wife, like in a holy manner. So we'll see exactly what he says to Ravad, right? We'll get into the whole language there in a second. ועל זה אמרו רבותינו ז"ל, המקשה עצמו לדעת יהיה בנדוי, right? So he says regarding this, right? Okay, let's see the language of the Ravad there. We can understand what he says there. So this book, that the Ravad wrote, is talking about high levels of sanctity, purity, of saintliness, So not everything he says here, may be halakha, but this is like, a level of saintliness going on here. So what does he say there? Brings the tour over here, exactly the language there. So before we get into that, right, he says one more thing here. I just want to cover before we go on to that. So he says, right, that even if a person is, being with his wife, his intention shouldn't be, for pleasure, right? That shouldn't be his main intent. So then what should be his intention? To fulfill his obligation, just like any other mitzvah, you know what I mean? When you do a mitzvah, what's supposed to be your motivation? Hashem commanded us to do so, and so I'm doing it, to fulfill the command of God. So that's the intention he should have when he's with his wife as well. Same thing, You shouldn't be thinking, oh, how much pleasure can I get? How much can I enjoy it more, How much do you want to enjoy it? What you want to make like a, some kind of a, hobby out of it, some kind of it's not really what it's supposed to be, So this is what he's trying to tell you here, it's a goyish thing that, the goyim, they think that sex is for pleasure, it's like just a pleasurable thing, it's a nice activity to enjoy yourself, to have a good time, But Hashem doesn't want us to do it for that purpose, So from Hashem, the purpose is to have children, to procreate, to do the will of Hashem, by procreating. We're supposed to bring children to the world. So this should be, your main intention when you're doing this, and also other things. We're going to get into also other issues, right? Because sometimes a person is not having children, so there's also other things that he has to be thinking about besides that, especially when he's not able to have children for some reason or another. So we'll talk about that a little bit more, right? But that's the whole point he's saying over here. Right? So he says his intention should be banim oskim b'Torah, right? Should have children who are, right, studying Torah, right? Mitzvot, we said, and doing mitzvot in Israel. So what does that mean? That you should know that should be your intention, to bring, holy children into the world, and not just to fulfill your physical, lusts, whatever, right? Whatever you want to call it. That shouldn't be your main point there, the main goal. So if that becomes your main goal, to do the mitzvah and not to have it as pleasure, that already changes the whole perspective of it, It's for a different purpose altogether. And that removes you from the world of the goyim, because the goyim, right, most of their lives are based on this, to have pleasure from sex. That's their whole thing. And that's not the Jewish way. So a person has to understand that, He's got to get that point. And that already changes your life, you become a different person because, that's what the goyim, that's what they live for this purpose. It becomes their main objective in life, which is not really, the Jewish way at all. Okay, good. So now he brings that, as we said, right, from the language of the Ravad in this book that we spoke about. So right, the Ravad talks about this. What thoughts should a person be having when he's, having relations with his wife? What should be in his head, right? Because the intentions are very important. They're very crucial. So he brings the language there, right? Exactly what he says. בדרשתי וחקרתי ומצאתי תוכן מעשה הזה על דל כוונות ג' מהם עיקר. So he says, right, that he cuts it down, this whole thing, right, into four intentions that a person should be having. And each intention is higher or better than the other, right? And there are some lower levels also. No, so you start from the highest one, and then we go down to the lower ones. But all these four things that he describes over here are all levels of mitzvah. He's doing it for a mitzvah. Just depends on what mitzvah he's trying to do. What's his intention, right? What is he trying to accomplish there? So he says, right, that three of these things, right? We said there's four of them. There's four categories. So he says three of them. So he says three of them are really like things that you get rewarded for having these intentions. He says the fourth one is like the least one out of all of them. In other words, the merit, the reward is the least of all these four. The last one. So now he's going to run down, right, all these four things and see, right? We're going to itemize, right, all these things. Okay, so let's see what we have here, right? Harishona, right? L'shem pri arvia. So the first one, the highest level, should be what? What should be your intention? To do the mitzvah of having children, right? Because that's what Hashem wants. He wants this world to be populated, by human beings, right? Especially Jews. So, since he wants that, you're trying to do as well, to bring more people, more Jews into this world. There's a saying in the Talmud, the Chazal, they say that Mashiach can't come until all the souls in this world have been created, right? Have come down to this world. So how do you do that? By having more children, so the more children you have, as a Jew I'm talking about, right? You're bringing Mashiach closer and closer. But if you're not having children, so obviously you're doing just the opposite, right? You're withholding Mashiach from coming by not having children, That's why you always find in the religious families, right? Go, to the religious communities, Haredi, communities, right? Whatever. Like, there are mothers over there, they have some of them 5 kids, some of them 8, some of them 10, some of them 15, right? You'll find, some ladies, they've had like, more than 15 children. In the Jewish world, you'll find that. So it's they're doing it because they want to do the mitzvah. They love it. They enjoy doing the will of Hashem. So they want to bring more children to the world. And not like the goyim, right? So what do? They have like 1 or 2 kids. And then they use contraception for the rest of their life. They don't want to bring any more children because they don't want to, they don't want to be bothered with it anymore. To spend money on the children. They say, well, I don't have enough money in my budget for that. Right, all kinds of excuses, I don't have time for it, right? I can't raise that many children. But the Jewish ladies, are bringing lots of souls into the world, right? 5, 7, 10, 15, right? And more. So right, that's the thing. So that's great, why? Because you have 2 people, right? The husband and the wife, So 2 of them are turning into 5 and 10 and 15, which is great. That's the way it should be. This way, you're bringing more into the world than you were, right? So you're helping Hashem, right, to fulfill his objective in this world, to bring more souls into the world, and then to bring Mashiach. That's the way that's the proper way to do things, Okay, well, I think we understand that, right? So that's the highest level, right? The highest level is his intention should be to have children. Especially holy children, right? That's even better. Yeah. So how do you bring holy children to the world? By doing things in a holy way, with your wife, being holy with her. And avoiding all the things which are not holy, right? We're going to talk about that, right? All the things which are holy, the things which are not holy, so forth and so on, right? We'll try to understand that. So that's the highest level, right? A bet mitzvot aseh, a bet b'tikun hablad. So he says there's a second one, which is right behind that, right? It's not so high like that one, but it's right behind it in terms of the right the benefits right that it brings to the world. So what is that talking about? That to fix up the child, to rectify the child. So what is that talking about? How do you rectify the child? By having relations with your wife. So the answer is that what happens is, when she's pregnant, right? There are some people, by the way, who mistakenly what they do is when their wife gets pregnant, they stop having relations with their wife, and this is not good to do that. It's not proper at all for several reasons, But one of the things is that the Talmud says that when you have relations with your wife, especially in the second and third trimester, of the pregnancy, this improves the quality of the child which is going to be born. Makes him more energetic, right? And more, right, better, aesthetically better looking also, right? All kinds of things like that. With a better complexion, brighter complexion, all kinds of things. So how does a person do that? By being with his wife, when she's pregnant. They say, the first 3 months of the pregnancy, it's not so good, not for the wife and not for the child. But the second and third trimester are good for the child. So therefore, a person should try to do that. That's the second level, right, of mitzvah that you can do by being with your wife, That's number 2. Level number 2. Okay, so we're going on, right? Going to the next piece here. Level number 3. He brings the straight Gemara that we just mentioned. So where is this Gemara? Masechet Nida, right? Lamed Aleph over there, Amud Aleph, talks about this issue, when it's good and, beneficial to be with your wife when she's pregnant. But some people, mistakenly, they consider it, not good to be with your wife when she's pregnant. It's like a taboo kind of thing, whatever, so they try to avoid it, whatever, and then they have some, girlfriend on the side, what I mean, that, that's supposed to fulfill that, gap, but that's not really the proper way to do it. You should be with your wife. Why be with some girlfriend, some girlfriend on the side? That's not the point. The point is to be with your wife. So why she's forbidden to you when she's pregnant? She's not forbidden to you. Right? She's only forbidden to you when she's nida, when she's menstruating, right? But she's not menstruating when she's pregnant. On the contrary, right? Women who are pregnant usually don't menstruate at all. So therefore, there's no reason to avoid it. Okay, so you get the point. So that's number 2, right? Now let's go to number 3. So he says like this, right? So he says this is also included in the category of having children, It's the same thing basically, right? Okay. So then, right, number 3, right? So he says like, but that if you see that your wife, right, for some reason or other, is in the mood to be with you, right? How do you see that? Because she's being very friendly, very very touchy, very romantic, things like this, right? You see that she's trying to, get you into the mood, right? So if you see, right, that she wants to be with you, as a husband, right? So you should, it's a mitzvah to satisfy her. That's what we're talking about, right? So that's number 3. So that can be, in various scenarios, right? There's also a scenario like this, as we already mentioned, which is that a person sometimes wants, his wife wants to be with him when he's leaving town, he's going away to travel. Because, she's going to miss him, when he's traveling. So therefore, right, he should try to be with her before he leaves. Same kind of mitzvah there, as we mentioned. So he says, right, that as we already mentioned, there are frequencies, being with your wife, depending on your job, right, the kind of job you do. And so it says that this is also included in that mitzvah, a frequency. So what does that mean? That when, these two things, when she is in the mood to be with you, or right, you see that from her behavior, whatever, all these things, as we mentioned, so that also adds to the general frequency that we mentioned, that's also added to that. So it's in the same category. Okay. So that was number 3. Okay. So now he gets into number 4. So this 4th one, right, as we said, it's the lowest level, but it's still considered to be a mitzvah. So what are we talking about here? That a person, a man knows himself, right? He knows his inclination. So he knows, right, that he needs to be with his wife, because if he's not going to do it, he's going to be thinking about other women, and maybe fall into sin, right, to do some kind of a sin, God forbid. So therefore, if his intention is to save himself from sin, by doing with some other woman, that he's not allowed to be with her. So to be with his wife because of that purpose of avoiding sinning is also mitzvah. So there's also reward for this, that he's doing it to save himself from sin. But he says it's not on the level of the first 3 though. As we said, right, that's the lowest level. So it says why? Because a person, who's in that kind of situation can, if he's a strong person, right, strong-willed, and he's a disciplined person, he can train himself, to control his urge, right, and not have to act it out. So if he has the strength to do that and to overcome his urge, right, without having to resort to this, right, so then that would have been even better. But if he's not strong enough, right, he sees, it's just not going, whatever, right? He's not that strong. So then, it's better to do it than not to do it. Why? Because this way he'll save himself from sin. Okay, good. So he goes on here, right, to explain it from the Gemara Sukkah there. It says in Nun Bet Amud Bet, Ever Katan Yesh B'Adam Maribo Saveh Al Maspi'o Ra'ev. Komakom, right? So it says the Gemara like this, right? The nature of, right, humanity, right, whatever, especially men we're talking about. He's talking about men over here, right? That what? That the Yetzer Hara, right, the Yetzer, for the inclination for sexual relations increases in terms of, how frequent you are. In other words, the more frequent you become, right, the desire also increases more. So therefore, you shouldn't think that, well, if I do it more, then I'll be saved from sin. It could be just the opposite, right? Because you're doing it more, you have more of a desire, so that could even, tempt you to sin even more. So it's not always the case that, being with your wife more will save you from sinning or having bad thoughts or whatever. And the reason is, as we said, right, because the nature of the man is the more he does, the more he wants. Okay, very good. So כל מקום, מי שכוונתו לכך שיהיה שבע מן ההיתר, שלא יראה ותווה לאיסור, כוונתו לטובה. So he says, but it's considered to be a good thing anyway, right? In other words, if his intention is to save himself from sinning by being with his wife, it's considered to be a good thing after all. Right? After all has been said and done. ויש לו שכר כאדם שיוכל להתענות יום אחד ולא צורך גדול שלא יכלה ולא יסתער הרבה. So he says he has reward for that as well, you know? So he compares it like a person who, right, that was able to fast one day, right, without much, suffering, right, and he's not going to get sick, or he's not going to suffer much. But anyway, he eats a little bit, right? Just like people do. So he's not going to be punished for that, right? That he ate like that. Because after all, he's doing it for a good purpose. What does that mean? So you should have energy, whatever. So it's a good thing. By the way, we're not talking about here if it's a fast day. Because there you were obligated to fast, you know what I mean? We're not talking about that. We're talking about where a person could optionally have fasted, It's an optional thing. And he could have done it easily. It wouldn't have been a big effort for him. But nevertheless, he avoided it and he ate a little bit just to, right, to keep energetic, and to fulfill his quota, every day, right? His job, whatever his job is. So he also gets some reward for that, for eating like that. Right? Right? So he says that he doesn't want to cause himself suffering, by fasting. So he eats a little bit, to be energetic, to have energy to do things that he thinks. Okay, so צדיק אוכל לסוב הנפשו, אבל מי שאינו צריך לדבר, but he says a person who doesn't need that, right? In other words, here's the thing, right? This guy doesn't really need, to have relations with his wife right now. He's not really in the mood so much. He's not really desperate, He's not. But he does it anyway, Why does he do it? If he's not really, so much desperate for it, why does he do it? So the answer is because he wants to have fun, It's like turning it into some kind of a hobby, like that, right? Just a way to enjoy yourself, get a cheap thrill, as they say, right? So if you're doing it for that purpose, right, there's no mitzvah at all, just the opposite, right? This is something bad. In other words, you're not really aroused, you're not really in the mood, and you're on purpose, you're arousing yourself to have some pleasure. So this is not a good thing, it's not a Jewish thing, to be like that. That's what he's telling you. So he said, you should know that this kind of thing comes from the evil inclination. To do like that, to be like that. So what's going to happen is, right, listen to this, right, that when a person starts having relations, sex, just for the purpose of pleasure, even though he doesn't really need to, so what happens is that it'll incite him, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, will incite him to do something forbidden also in the end. He'll come to do something forbidden. That's because this the sages said, right? So regarding that, the sages said, if you bring yourself, right, if a man, right, brings himself to erection, on purpose, just to enjoy it, he doesn't really need it right now. He's not really in the mood so much. He's not desperate, he does it anyway to have fun, So a person like that, says the Gemara, he's a nidui. What does that mean? He's excommunicated because he behaves like that. Right, so he says this resembles a person, who he's satiated, he's full, he already ate, he had a nice dinner, right, and he's not thirsty, whatever, nothing, but then he starts to eat more, just for the sake of enjoying it, even though you're full, and you're not thirsty, and you drink it and eat more and more and more and more and more, just to enjoy it, to enjoy that, sensation of eating. Right. So this is considered to be like, animalistic, he says, right? Drinking more wine, even though you already drank, right? How much can you drink, So you want to get more drunk, right? There's a Makita. So what's going to be with him? It says he's going to throw up in the end, right? It's going to happen. Right? He'll throw up. He'll puke. Why? Because he's eating too much, drinking too much, right? So it's the same thing like that, same idea. But so he said, he's like an animal, becomes like animalistic already, being like that. It's not good. Right? Sometimes animals, they do that. They eat until, they like, they eat so much, sometimes it kills them. So that's an important thing to understand, right? We don't want to become like that. Okay. So he says, goes on to say, right? Okay, first let's do Bit Yosef a little bit. We'll come back. So we're done with this. So let's just do Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. We'll do the first Shulchan Aruch and we'll continue Bezat Hashem tomorrow. I held you long enough today. So it says like this, Shulchan Aruch, right? Right? So it says if a person is married, he shouldn't be too often with his wife, as we said, like a chicken, what I mean? What are you, chicken? What, chickens, that's all they do. It's like, you're making it like a pastime, What is your favorite pastime? To sexual relations? It's not the way it should be. That's the thing, right? So therefore, a person should try to do like the Torah tells him, the frequency that the Torah describes. Right? So as we said, right, how does that work? This is like a, more or less, right? Because there can be also fluctuations with this, all kinds of fluctuations. But in general, right, the rabbi said, so he says, we said, right, a person who's not really working, physically, right? He doesn't have physical labor, so he's kind of like, just hanging out, do all day, right? Social. He's a socialite, right? Whatever, right? One of these guys, right? So a guy like that, he should be once a day with his wife, every day, once a day. That's good. That's a good thing, right? Right. So what about if a person is working, right, and going to a different town to work, then he comes home, right? This once a week. Since he travels every day, he's tired, So we tell him, okay, once a week for you. You poor guy, you travel every day, you got a tough life. Life is not so easy for you. So as we said, right, in the old days that was a little bit different because they didn't have cars, these kinds of transportation, right? They used to physically, have to travel, physically. So it was very, it made you very tired, it was very demanding on the body. Obviously, not like what we have today. So it's a little bit different, today. Not exactly the same thing. Because a person, can travel, drive once 1 hour, 2 hours, go out of town and come back. He's not really so tired, like, well, what happened, so what, you drove, from right from Queens to Long Island, whatever, to Manhattan, so what, you're so tired, what happened, or you drove, from Jersey, to Manhattan to go to work, right? I'm talking to you about New Yorkers, all right. Same thing wherever you live, right? Same idea. So right, you're not dusty, you're not so tired because you like drove an hour or two, So it's no big deal. But in those days, when they went out of town, when they came back, they were really tired, like seriously. Okay, that's the story there, right? So and he goes on. As we said, right? But if he's working in his own town, he doesn't have to leave town to work. Right? So twice a week is good. Why twice a week? Because after all, he does work. He's a laborer. So he gets tired. So he comes home. He's tired. So he can't do it every day. It's just too much for him. He'll have a stroke. He can't. He can't do it right that much. So therefore, we tell him, okay, twice a week is good for you. After all, you're a hardworking guy, right? You work hard. You work for your money. So we give you a break. Twice a week is good for you. Now, that's the idea. Okay. So then he goes on, as we said, right? What about these donkey drivers, right? Once a week is good, right? Because these guys, they travel long distances, so they're tired, right? Gemalim, what about the camel drivers, right? They go even longer distances, right? So it's once a month, once a month, because they go a long way, they travel a long distance, right? So they're not even coming home every day, You'll be lucky to see them once a week, maybe, whatever, something like that, right? Or every 2 weeks. God knows. Whatever it is, right? Sapanim. What about sailors, right? As we said, they go away for a long time, They sail across the seas. So they're once every 6 months, right? Because he comes home probably like twice a year, this guy, He's always sailing on the sea, What about Tamid Chami, as we said, right? Shabbat. So we want him to do Dafka on Shabbat, right? That's what we want. We already told you why that is, right? Because the neshama that comes down from that union is a very high level neshama, So if you want a high level child, that you're proud of, like, oh, my child, he's so holy, he's so beautiful, wonderful, wonderful personality, wonderful character. He loves Torah, he loves mitzvot. Why is that? Because you brought him down to this world under the proper conditions. And that's how he turned out like that. So how do you do that? Be with your wife on Shabbat, right? That's the way to do it. Okay, good. As we said, right, besides those frequencies that we mentioned, you also have to be with your wife when she goes to the mikveh, right? That night that she goes to the mikveh, you should be with her that night. Also, when he goes out, as we said, right, to travel, to go on the road, if he's not going for a davar mitzvah, for something for mitzvah, he should be with his wife before he leaves. והוא מכיר בה שהיא משתדלת ומרצה אותו, קשט את עצמה לפניו כדי שייתן דעתו עליה, right? So also, as we said, right, if you see that your wife is in the mood to be with you, you see those signs, right? She's romantic, she's touchy, she's very, clinging to you, she wants to look nice for you all of a sudden, she's dressing up and putting on makeup and perfume and this and that, you see, right? She wants to get your attention. So if you see that she's, looking to be with you, so satisfy her, and make her happy, That's the thing, right? Okay. So he says, right, also, even if he is with her, what his intention should not be just for pleasure, as we said, right? That shouldn't be your main idea here. No? It should be like you're fulfilling your obligation, just like any other mitzvah. That you're obligated to do that as a mitzvah, to do the mitzvah of your creator. You should have children who are, learning Torah, doing mitzvot b'Yisrael. Right? So this is also, as we said, right, this level number one. Now, number two is to fix, rectify the child when your wife is pregnant, right? The second and third trimester are good for the child, to be with your wife. It rectifies him. So as we said, right, it comes out good complexion, bright complexion, and energetic. That's also good, right? Those are good things. ואם הוא מכוון לגדול עצמה כדי שלא יתאבד עבירה, as we said, right, number 4, if he's also intending, to save himself from sin, that's also a good thing. He wants to be with, he has to have something, otherwise he's going to get desperate and it may do a sin. So he wants to, like protect himself from the sin, so therefore he does it. So says Ramah here, right? There's also a reward for that as well. But it would have been better if he would have been able to control himself, in a case like this. Why? Because as we said, right, sometimes the frequency adds more to your desire. You may think actually may save you, actually may make things even more severe. Right? But he says if you don't really need it, as we said, right? If you're not really desperate and you're not, doing it to save yourself from sin, you're just doing it to have some fun, It's a nice pastime, whatever, right? Like a goy, right? Whatever, right? If that's your purpose, Zohi, right? This is from the evil inclination, right? This kind of thing. I tell you, so what's going to be from doing the permitted way, he's going to do it the forbidden way. Right? Regarding this, Rabbi said, if a person who does this, right, he's like excommunicated. What does that mean? He's not really, in the mood. He's not really, desperate. He's not really, it's not really intense desire there. But he makes himself, like puts himself intentionally in the mood, by stimulating himself. Why do you need that for? If you're okay, why are you bringing yourself, into the stimulation? For what? You're fine. You're not really desperate. You're not really in the mood. You're not really, right? It's not urgent for you. So what? Why are you doing it? For what? That's not a Jewish thing, right? As we said, right? Okay, very good. So we'll stop here, right? B'ezras Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow. I took you guys a little bit long tonight, but we started a little bit late also. I was a little bit tired, from the way that I came home. So I took a little bit, I fell asleep, right before class. I was sitting in my chair and I fell asleep on my chair. Jet lag, it's jet lag. So, whatever you want to call it, right? So B'ezras Hashem, we'll try to start, earlier. Now that I'm getting back to normal a little bit. Okay, very good. So B'ezras Hashem, Chazak Baruch. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. We'll see you tomorrow, and B'ezras Hashem will continue. And Chazak Baruch. Laila Tov.
Kavod Tov, thank you so much.
God bless. All the best.